And I want to get underneath the surface. I want to find out what is the common cause of this kind of behavior. So as I understood and read about mimetics, and how many of you are familiar with the concept of mimetics? Okay, a goodly number. Nice. I'm not going to go into mimetics. In fact, you don't need to know anything about it to understand what I'm talking about today. But if you do want to know more about it, Dawkins is a great place to start, The Selfish Gene. But as I started understanding and looking at religion from a mimetic point of view, I found that the viral metaphor works the best. And it was like a flashlight in the dark. Everywhere I pointed the concept, it explained new behaviors in ways I'd never seen explained by an anthropologist, sociologist, psychologist, any other discipline, anthropologist even. So the purpose of the one thing I wanted to say. I wanted to ask a couple questions in my research. Why do ministers use hypnotic techniques? I was trained in hypnosis, so I would go to church. I was still religious at the time. I'd go to my hypnotic training, and then I'd go to church. And I'd look at the minister and say, wow, he's using the same technique I just learned last week in my hypnosis training. And I'd grab the minister out and say, wow, you really made me feel the Holy Spirit right there. How'd you do that? I said, I don't know. And he was telling me the truth. These ministers literally do not know what they're doing. They learned it from the minister that taught them. And they learned it from the minister that taught them. It's a technique that's been handed down. Just like you catch a cold from somebody, you catch techniques like hypnotize a whole congregation. That's what was going on, I suspect. Second is what makes people oblivious to the inconsistencies of their own religion, even as they can point out the inconsistencies of everybody else's. I mean, ask a Christian, what's wrong with being a Muslim? They'll tell you. Ask a Muslim, what's wrong with being a Jew? They'll tell you. I mean, it doesn't matter. Ask a Scientologist, what's wrong with being a Christian? Ask a Christian, what's wrong with being a Scientologist? A Mormon, every one of those groups can tell you what's wrong with everybody else. What's wrong with your religion? They can't tell you. They're blind. It's like suddenly their eyes glaze over. And I am serious. If you watch them get into a discussion, ask them, well, tell me what's wrong with Buddhism. Tell me what's wrong with Islam. And watch their eyes. And then say, okay, what's wrong with your religion? Watch their eyes. It will like suddenly they go into a trance. They lose consciousness. They lose critical functioning in their brain. Their brain stops functioning just like that. And you laugh. I'm laughing too. It's funny. And I'm going to give you an experiment later that you can go back and try on all your religious friends. That will illustrate this. So, the purpose of the God virus. First thing I want to tell you is logic is not the answer. How many of you have gotten in an argument with a religious person? Thank you. All right. Okay. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. If you got them. Now, how many of you won the argument in their mind? Okay, so one hand stayed up. Good.
I got a nice letter from a woman.
Occasionally it does happen, but think of this. How many of us raised our hands in here? And I put my hand up too. And yet it doesn't work. I mean, over and over again, you can argue with people about their religion, and it rarely, I mean, if it happens 1 in 500 times, you're lucky. So if you knew something wasn't going to work 499 times out of the 500 you did it, you'd probably stop. No. We keep butting our heads against that wall.
Wouldn't we?
Right. Well, I think there's some reasons for that. I'm not going to go into great depth for that, but I think there are some reasons why we atheists continue to beat our heads against that brick wall. And I'm going to, at the end of my talk tonight, I'm going to try and make some suggestions about how you can go around the brick wall rather than hitting your head against it. Because it tends to disrupt friendships, undermine relationships. It does bad things, especially if you got to work with that person tomorrow, or you got to go to the Christmas party with them at your house next Christmas. You know, if they're a family member or a child or a parent. So how do we go around the wall rather than beating our heads against the wall? I'll come back to that later. The great social psychologist Kurt Lewin said in 1952, there's nothing more practical than a good theory. So tonight, I'm going to suggest to you a good theory. I think a theory that you can literally go back and test. Any theory worth its salt should be testable. That's why the theory of evolution has been so successful, even though it's just a theory. That was a joke, guys. Maybe we got a bunch of fundamentalists in here. So it's been very successful because you can take it and predict things from it. The standard model of physics has been very successful because you can take it and predict things from it. Well, I would hope you can predict some behavior from what I'm going to tell you tonight. You can go out and actually do this experiment with your religious friends. I call it the exorcist test. How many of you have seen the movie The Exorcist? Okay, oh, a lot of people, more than normal. All right. Well, The Exorcist, I noticed this. I was at a high school reunion some years back with a friend of mine. And I said, I've noticed this about religious people, so I'm going to show it to you. And I had her, she was kind of sitting over to the side, and I went up to this gal who graduated with me. Her name's Madeline, and she is now a world-traveling evangelist. She goes all over the world, preaching to Germany and South Africa, and she's very proud of it. So I go up to her and I talk to Madeline, and I say, well, tell me about your children, and how they doing, and how's your husband do? I know he's sitting over, so I was kind of working all the normal things you talked about. And as I'm doing this, my friend's sitting over here watching, and of course she knows what I'm doing. And I'm asking all these questions even as I'm watching her eye patterns, watching her mouth, watching the way she expresses herself. Then I say to her, tell me about your work. Now her work is evangelism. It was an immediate, instant change in her demeanor. Her cadence changed. Her gestures changed. She started becoming very authoritarian, if you will. And this is the way it was like. Suddenly, the exorcist started talking. The demon started talking to me. My friend is over here, and she is about to crack up. She can hardly keep from laughing, because I told her, watch, this woman will do these things. I can predict it down that close to reality. And I was able to do that right in front of her. Once I had done that, it was the first time I'd ever done it in front of another person. I came back to her and thought, I think we got something here. You can predict religious behavior. Do this with, now don't tell your religious friends, by the way, you're doing this, or that might not be good. And after you've done this little experiment, I don't have a clue how you're going to get out of there without being converted. But anyway, it's a good little experiment. So what you're going to do is you find a religious person. You're going to ask them about their children, ask them about their hobbies, ask them about things they really care about, that they're passionate about. Because you want to see them, you want to see and get a good sample of behavior of something they're excited about and interested in. Hobbies and children are something they're very passionate about. Then ask them about their religion. They're passionate about their religion too, but the behavior is very different. There's something going on there, and it's called the God virus. It has infected their mind, and it's taken them over, and we'll understand more how that works by understanding a little bit about human pathology. There's a little organism called a toxoplasmic gondii. I could have called God bacteria, any of those things, because all of those things do get into our minds and control them. And how many of you have gotten a virus on your computer?